You see, self-fulfillment is the bodybuilder who goes to the gym and develops the muscles and spends all the time admiring that physique. Personal growth is that individual who goes to the gym and lifts those weights and practices those jump shots so he can be part of a winning team. Self-fulfillment is the Dead Sea. It's an end. Personal growth is the Sea of Galilee. It's a living, growing, vibrant water. Self-fulfillment is the student who learns so they can display their knowledge. Personal growth is the teacher who learns so they can teach. It's the speaker who acquires knowledge that is valuable to somebody else so they can communicate that to them. That's the difference. Basically, we need to be consistent if we're going to make it big in the profession. And when I say make it big, I'm talking about getting in that position where you have an influence on other people, where you have that word of encouragement. Now, if you're going to talk about building a solid financial career, you ought to be an example of what you're talking about. Consistency of action, I believe, is the key to long-term success.
Zig Ziglar was one of the world's most popular motivational speakers. Ziglar was one of 12 children raised by a widowed mother during the Great Depression. He wrote over 25 books, including See You at the Top, and inspired millions of people around the world. In this exclusive training, Ziglar shares with us the strategies to get rid of the victim mentality, take responsibility for your life, and develop the skill of discipline. Special thanks to the Ziglar family for partnering with us to release this exclusive content on our YouTube channel. Enjoy.
I'm going to start my presentation today the way I start all presentations, regardless of who I'm speaking to, on what subject or wherever. I'm going to start with some questions. Here's my first one. How many of you have heard me before, or else this will be your first time? Can I see your hands, please? All right. Well, you are here. Now, listen carefully. The next one's kind of tricky. How many of you honestly and sincerely believe, as a matter of fact, you're totally convinced that during the next 10 days there's something you can specifically do that would make your personal life, your family life, and your business life worse? Can I see your hands? All right. Then how many of you believe, honestly and sincerely, there's something you can specifically do in the next 10 days that would make your personal, business, and family life better? Can I see your hands? How many of you believe that the choice is yours? How many of you believe that every choice has an end result? Now let me pause and tell you what you have just said. What you just said, whether you knew it or not, is simply this. I don't care how bad or good my past has been. I don't care how bad or good my present is. There is something I can specifically do in the next 10 days that would make my personal, family, and business life either better or worse, and the choice is mine, and that choice will have an end result. That's what you've said. If my timing is correct, since I seriously started the talk, I'm now 62 seconds in it. You see, as speakers, one of the things we must do is grab an audience as quickly as possible and feed them some nourishment almost immediately so that we whet their appetite for further listening. I'm convinced of that. I'm the 10th of 12 children. I asked my mom one time, I said, "Why so many?" She said, "Well, son, where do you think I should have stopped?" Well, I sure didn't think after number 9. Now, you got to put that down as a for certain. But, you know, my dad died when I was 5. There were 6 of us too young to work, heart of the Depression. We had it tough financially. But I'm so grateful I did not zero in on what we did not have. I did zero in on what others had. You know what I noticed as a child in Yazoo City, Mississippi, and I know a lot of people go around the country trying to impress people by claiming to be from Yazoo City, but I really am. I noticed as a child in the Depression that there were some people wearing nice clothes, driving nice cars, living in nice houses, taking nice trips, playing golf at the country club. And I have noticed in every decade since, ladies and gentlemen, that regardless of how good the economy is, there are some people who are going to foul it up royally, economically. And I don't care how bad the economy is, there are some people who are going to do extraordinarily well financially. How many of you have noticed exactly the same thing? Then let me ask you if you can come to the same conclusion, and can you share with your audiences the same bit of hope and encouragement? That really it is not what is happening out there that is the determining factor. It is what's going on in our own mind that will make the difference. We've now spent another couple of minutes in sharing an idea, a challenging idea. You see, if we can get rid of that loser's limp, that concept that it is somebody else's fault, that I am a victim, if we can destroy that in a person's thinking, we've given them that first glimmer of hope, and as the privilege of the platform, which we also love and enjoy, I believe that's one of our great opportunities to go with that great privilege. Neil Rudenstein's the president of Harvard University. His mother is a part-time waitress. His father is a prison guard. You see, it doesn't make any difference who your mama and your daddy might be. It's what you do. We need to let people know that. So important. A lot of people don't realize it, but Yazoo City, Mississippi is in the geographical center of the world. Did you know that you can start, and Mr. Kemp, you might not even have known this, that it being the geographical center of the world, you can start in Yazoo City, Mississippi, and go anywhere in the world you want to go. That's a fact. And the maximum distance from Yazoo City to anywhere in the world you want to go is just 12,000 miles, and the message has nothing to do with geography. What it really says is that we need to share with people that they can start from where they are. And the distance from there to where they want to go is the same. It really does rest with them. But you got to have a mission. As speakers, we need one. Our mission is simply this: to be the difference maker in the personal, family, and business lives of enough people to make a positive difference in America and the world. Oh, I know that sounds presumptuous, so let me share with you a simple little story that might bring it back into perspective. A grandfather was walking on the beach with his grandson, and as an aside, if I'd known the grandchildren were going to be so much fun, I certainly would have been nicer to their parents. But he was walking on the beach with his grandson, and he would reach down and he'd pick up a sand dollar and he'd throw it out to sea, and he'd reach down and he'd pick up another one and throw it out to sea, and another one. And finally his grandson said, "Granddaddy, what are you doing?" And the grandfather said, "Well, son, these sand dollars are living organisms. They've been washed ashore on the waves, and they'll die here in the hot sun if I don't throw them out to sea, and that's what I'm doing." And the grandson said, "But Granddaddy, there's so many of them. What possible difference can it make?" And the grandfather reached down and he picked up another one and he threw it out to sea, and he said, "For this one, it makes all the difference in the world." My friend John Maxwell from San Diego says that in a lifetime, each individual influences 10,000 other people on average. As speakers, you will influence tens of thousands of other people. And there are those in that audience who need the positive influence that you can bring. It's an awesome, awesome responsibility. I want to share some things with you since we're in the communications world. I now live in Dallas. I wasn't born there, but I got there quick as I could. This lady went to see a lawyer for a divorce, and he said, "What's the problem?" She started generalizing. He said, "No, let's be specific." And she said, "Like how?" And he said, "Well, do you have any grounds?" She said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, we got about 40 acres out here on the north end of town." He said, "No, that's not what I'm talking about. Do you have a grudge?" She said, "No, but we got a really neat little carport there on the side of the house." And he said, "Woman, we need to get personal." And she said, "Like how?" And he said, "Well, for example, does that man ever beat you up?" She said, "Oh, no, I'm up every day at least an hour, hour and a half before he even turns over." He said, "Woman, do you accept any responsibility for the difficulties?" And she said, "Like how?" And he said, "Well, for example, do you ever wake up grouchy?" She said, "Oh, no," said, "I just let him get up on his own whenever he will." And he said, "Well, why do you want to divorce him?" She said, "The guy just can't communicate." See, I believe that communication is enormously important. But where does success on the platform begin? It really begins with commitment. Most people are about as committed as a kamikaze pilot on his 39th mission. I never will forget, January 7th, 1992, I rode past the Plano, Texas Rec Center where I do my exercising and weightlifting. Had to back away from the weightlifting. I was bulking up, and a lot of people thought I was on steroids, and, my reputation is such, can't do that. But I couldn't get in that day. No parking space. Rode past. Next day I was back by. This time I squeezed in, went in the Nautilus room, and every machine had 3, 4, 5, 6 people lined up. I couldn't fight that. I came back to the front desk, and I said to the young man, Sean, what on earth is going on? Old Sean grinned so wide he could have eaten a banana sideways as he responded to me. He said, Zig, don't worry about it. Don't give it a thought. Give us about 3 weeks. It'll be back to normal. These are our New Year's resolution people. You see, a lot of people, that's the way they do things. They make a resolution, and as long as it's convenient, involving no pain or trouble, and as long as they remember it, they'll be delighted to do it. But a commitment is absolutely necessary. Let me kind of set a little scenario here to tell you what I'm talking about. He was an all-pro 8 consecutive years. He had just signed a contract for $6.4 million. And yet last year, this young man, who some of you probably have already figured it out, this young man, Hakeem, and incidentally in his native language, that means doctor or wise one, Olajuwon, and that in his language means being on top. And when you talk to Hakeem Olajuwon, he will talk to you about sacrifice and humility and equality and patience and tolerance and self-restraint and self-control and discipline. What did he do last year between seasons? He knew he had a weakness in his game. It was a 15-foot jump shot, 500 times a day. He went out there, and from 15 feet, he practiced the jump shot. All you got to do is check the records, look at the scores, see what happened in the championship game. And you'll discover that Houston would not have won the NBA championship had Akin not perfected that shots, because they were so close. And those shots are what made the difference. And what I'm talking about there as speakers is that's the difference between personal fulfillment or self-fulfillment and personal growth. You see, self-fulfillment is the bodybuilder who goes to the gym and develops the muscles and spends all the time admiring that physique. Personal growth is that individual who goes to the gym and lifts those weights and practices those jump shots so he can be part of a winning team. Self-fulfillment is the Dead Sea. It's an end. Personal growth is the Sea of Galilee. It's a living, growing, vibrant water. Self-fulfillment is the student who learns so they can display their knowledge. Personal growth is the teacher who learns so they can teach. It's the speaker who acquires knowledge that is valuable to somebody else so they can communicate that to them. That's the difference, basically, in what I'm talking about. The privilege of the platform. I dug up my trusty 1828 Noah Webster dictionary. I use that one because they used the right words in those days with the right identifications. Do you know why Webster wrote that dictionary? His wife kept asking him, now, what does that mean? Well, anyhow, I dug it up, and I looked up the word privilege, and it's a particular and peculiar benefit or advantage enjoyed by a person, company, or society beyond the common advantage of other citizens. It's an advantage, right, or immunity not common to others of the human race. Privilege. Any nation, though, that are individual, who takes their privileges more seriously than their rights and responsibilities will soon lose both. We need to be consistent if we're going to make it big in the profession. And when I say make it big, I'm talking about getting in that position where you have an influence on other people, where you have that word of encouragement. Now, if you're in physical fitness, you need to be consistent. In other words, if you're going to talk about physical fitness, you ought to be physically fit. If you're going to talk about ethics and moral values, you ought to maintain those. If you're going to talk about building a solid financial career, you ought to be an example of what you're talking about. Consistency of action, I believe, is the key to long-term success on the platform. You know, of course, what you call a person who practices one thing and preaches another. What do you call them? Hypocrites. As you well know, a hypocrite is a fellow who gripes and complains about the sex, nudity, and violence on his VCR. I think you'll agree. That's a hypocrite. I might also say that a hypocrite is a fellow who simply is not himself on Sunday. Consistency of action is what I really want to talk about. And you know, the truth of the matter is, as individuals, we need to understand that the mic is on and the mic is open and the camera is on. I'm always intrigued with these public figures, athletes and politicians and so forth. Not statesmen, Mr. Kemp. Politicians, there's a difference. That are always saying, well, they misquoted me, or I didn't realize the mic was on. Friend, the mic is always open and the camera is always on us.
Hey there, it's Mark Tim with the Ziglar family, and I sure hope you're enjoying the video from my mentor, the legendary Zig Ziglar. Because you're part of Evan's audience, we want to give you a special bonus. It's a cool little book called The Little Book of Big Quotes, packed with awesome content. This book is free just for you. Check out the description below, and it's yours. Alrighty, let's get you back to Zig.
Consistency of action, and the words we use are so incredibly important. I love what Charles Osgood said when he said, compared to the spoken word, a picture is a pitiful thing indeed. If we're going, ladies and gentlemen, to influence people, and that's not saying that I do not approve of overhead. I'm simply saying that the warmth and the affection and the love and the hope and the encouragement that the human voice can communicate is the most powerful communication tool of all times, particularly if we consistently, from the platform and in our personal and family lives, are consistent in those words we use and the deeds we follow. How important, how powerful are they? Well, you see, your impact can be absolutely incredible. We can turn this world of ours completely around. If all of the speakers were committed to deliver that message of hope, that message of encouragement, understanding that the basic philosophy is, philosophy is simply the love of wisdom. A philosophy that clearly says that you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. That concept, that philosophy will encourage people, and as you'll see as we go along, it works in everybody's life. But the power of your words. Adlai Stevenson put it this way: when Cicero spoke, the crowd stood and cheered. When Demosthenes spoke, the crowd stood and marched. We need to get people into action. We need to have them marching. We need to leave them with something that they, yes, can take a specific action on. How important, how powerful are words. A man named P.C. Merrill, when I was a young salesman, 22 years old, in debt, broke, the whole smear, going absolutely nowhere. And Mr. Merrill said some words to me in Charlotte, North Carolina. 21 other people were there. But the words he said to me so dramatically changed my life that before the year was over, I was the number 2 salesman in America out of over 7,000 salespeople. Had the best promotion the company had to offer. Had swapped a little Crosley, which I had driven to that meeting for a luxury car, and the next year was the highest paid field manager in the United States. You see, ladies and gentlemen, one word can have a lot of impact. I picked up Dr. Norman Vincent Peale's book, The Power of Positive Thinking. I occupied a solid position with the company I was in. Had 4 field managers when I was promoted, and almost immediately tragedy happened to all 4 of them. Our business went way down. There was talk about getting rid of Zig because he couldn't do the job. Oh, I was having a pity party. Problem with pity parties is very few people come and nobody brings presents. I picked up that book of Dr. Peale's. I'd been saying, oh, I'm the good guy. I didn't have anything to do with that heart attack and cutting the toe off and the integrity problem. I didn't have anything to do with that. And Dr. Peale in his book said, you're right, Zig. You had nothing whatever to do with it. But you've got everything to do with how you handle what happens to you. You see, folks, the reality is 300 world-class leaders. I'm talking about Churchill and Roosevelt. I'm talking about Helen Keller and Mother Teresa and Clara Barton. I'm talking Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. 300 world-class leaders. 75% of them either had some serious physical defect, or else they had been abused as children, or they had been raised in poverty. But they clearly understood it. It's not what happens to you, it's how you handle it that's going to make the difference. Words can make such a big difference. Calvin Roberts said to me time after time, why don't you write a book? You got something to say, write it. Without that encouragement, there might have been several more years before See You at the Top became a reality. You see, I believe we need to give people hope. We need to give them encouragement. And the reality is that book contains 384 pages. It took me 10 months to write it. And in those 10 months, I figured it out. You see, all I had to do was write 1 1/4 pages a day, every day for 10 months. In the same period of time, I lost 37 pounds. That meant all I had to do was lose 1 9/10 ounces a day. We need to give our audiences a thought, an action plan, an idea, and let it be such that, yes, I can do that. See, everybody in their own mind said, I can do that. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we give to people. And to do that, we literally must understand the power of the word. Think about this. Good or bad words make a difference. A fellow wrote a book. The title of it was The Origin of the Species. It was the book that most dramatically influenced Karl Marx and Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini. They built their whole philosophy on it. It's the ultimate book on racism, the inferior race. And so that gave them privilege to destroy or attempt to destroy a whole race, because they were setting up the dream race, the positive Aryan race. And we know the result. Wonder what would have happened had they carefully studied their Bible. What a difference this world would have been. What a difference they would make. It can be positive or negative, and so the choice, I'm saying, really is yours. You need to read and prepare. Somebody asked me, how do you prepare? Well, for the last 22 years, I have read an average of 3 hours a day. What do you read? Well, I read for information, I read for knowledge, and I read for wisdom. The truth is, every day I read my Bible and the daily newspaper. That way I know what both sides are up to. And I think that's important. But I want to emphasize the point. You can have all of the knowledge in the world. You get information out of the newspaper and magazine. You get knowledge out of good books, encyclopedias, and seminars conducted by the National Speakers Association. That is where you get knowledge. But knowledge is not the answer, folks. If it were, every PhD in America would be rich and happy, and every high school dropout would be broke and miserable. And we know that's not true. And so to go with that, we need wisdom. Now, what is wisdom? It's a spiritual dimension. It is nothing but the correct use of knowledge. Doesn't make any difference how much knowledge you got. If you don't know how to use it, you're going to come to wrong conclusions. And that's what we're getting at here. What is this thing called the privilege? What is it that people really do want in life? Well, everybody wants to be happy. I've never yet met a human being that said, no, I want to be miserable. But let me simply say this to you. Other people can give you pleasure, but you'll never be happy until you do things for other people. You can take it to the bank. That's absolute truth. What's the greatest joy you receive? Is it because somebody says you're a great speaker? Or is it because somebody comes up to you and says, let me tell you what it meant to me when you said this and I responded to it? You know, too many people are too self-centered. One of the major problems of most speakers, or many speakers I should say, is the average individual believes that anybody who can stand up and put 3 sentences together and still manage to walk off the platform are some kind of genius. And so they come up and they brag on us, you know, and it's not long before we get to thinking we're pretty hot stuff. And that's where the downhill slide begins right there. False pride and sex is the thing that destroys more budding careers than anything I've seen. And lack of preparation is another factor that figures in that. We want to be happy, and if we can work with some people to help them achieve that. But you're not going to please everybody. It doesn't make any difference what you do. Most of you know that Thomas Edison worked thousands of experiments trying to perfect the electric light. When he finally got it burning, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and he heard this voice from the back of the house, Tom, it's 2 o'clock. Put that light out and come on to bed. So you're not going to please everybody. That's fair. How much preparation do you do? I don't know about you. I do a lot of public seminars. That means I simply do the same seminar from one city to the next. I've done hundreds of them. I'll average roughly 3 hours before each one. Because you see, I can't gamble. I can't take a chance. I must be ready. If you've got 1,000 people or 16,000 people, or in one audience I spoke to, 60,000 people in the Georgia Dome, if you got that many people, each investing an hour of their time, that would be 5,000 hours, 10,000 hours. Think of all of those hours. Your responsibility from having taken them from their homes, their families, their jobs, is to feed them something infinitely more valuable than the time they would have invested doing their regular job. You need to understand what they want. Everybody wants to be healthy. A lot of people burn the candle at both ends, thinking, boy, if I just work harder, I can get more done. Evidence is solid that it is not. I heard about a moth that flew into a 2-year-old's birthday party and burned the end at both candles. I mean, now, things like that's a little subtle for some of you, but and instead of the redhead told me that wasn't going to work, but anyhow, there it is. We need to be healthy. We need to look at our physical health, our mental health, and our spiritual health. You see, if you're going to get it all, you got to deal with the whole person in the personal life, the family life, and their business life. You got to look at the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. If you're going to get it all. And I don't know about you, I want to win the whole ball game. Happy, everybody wants to be healthy, and they want to be, ladies and gentlemen, at least reasonably prosperous. I get amused at people who say, well, I'm not really interested in money. Anybody that say that will lie about other things too. Well, Ziglar, can you put it all together? Can you really have it all? Can you help other people get what they want and still benefit? Well, yes, you can, and that's the exciting thing. Now, I was privy to a kind of a private conversation, and I hope I don't offend anybody with this, but I was listening to 4 of our illustrious speakers here kind of talking away, and it was Cabot Robert and Og Mandino and Nito Cobain and Don Hudson, And all of them were complaining that now they have to check their wallets as excess baggage. I mean, that's I mean, prosperity is possible in this business, but it's possible if it's tied to helping other people. How do you build in this business? You adopt the immigration attitude. Did you know that an immigrant, whether they're from the Orient or South America or Africa or the Middle East or Europe, is 4 times as likely to become a millionaire in America as are the native born? Why is that? Little 4-year-old girl explained it to me in minute detail. Got aboard an aircraft. That's generally the way I fly. I was in Dallas, Texas. I was on my way to Norfolk, Virginia. I was the first one aboard. And as I got seated in seat 2C, aboard came this little family, a mother carrying an infant, leading a toddler, and a little 4-year-old was bringing up the rear. The mother and the 2 little ones quickly made their way to the rear and had their seat. The little 4-year-old turned and looked left into the cockpit. Those 3 magnificent figures with all of the bars, and they saw all of the wheels and the bells and the whistles and all of the electronic gear, probably more than that child had seen in her lifetime. And when she turned around, those little eyes were as big as saucers. I don't know why the child did it, but she put her little hands on her little legs and kind of bent over, looked down that long fuselage and said, "Gosh." That's what immigrants say when they come to America. Gosh. What an incredible opportunity. I host a TV program called Unsung Heroes. We had a chance. One of the young people that they were focusing in on was a young girl from Vietnam. She had been chosen as one of the heroes. And when they called her and told her that they were going to be coming out to film her, she could not contain her excitement and enthusiasm. Oh, she said, "I'll have my apartment all cleaned up. It is so beautiful. You're going to absolutely love it." They got out there. It was in a very dangerous section of town. 2 rooms, glaring paint on it, cheap pictures, no furniture almost. But for her, it was total luxury. That immigrant comes into America, and they pick up the want-ad card, and they say, "Did you see this? This morning in the Washington Post, there are 286 jobs offered, and some of them pay $5 an hour." Oh, I know you folks here don't think that's a whole lot of money, but where I come from, that's 3 days' wages, and I live cheaply. I'll get me a second job, then I'll go to community college. I will get myself an education. And the truth is, by the time they find out we got problems in America, it's too late. They've already made it. They've already made it. That's what I'm talking about. The sheer joy, the excitement, the privilege of the platform. Are you really turned on every time you get up? Or do you think, "Boy, here's another speech"? If that's your attitude, I plead with you, do the rest of us a favor and get out of this business. Get out of this business. Your responsibility simply is too great. The possibilities for good are so absolutely enormous that you cannot comprehend it. We need to, if we're going to really be prepared, we got to look at our physical lives. I'm 67. I know most of you thought I was in my early 30s. I have a resting heart rate of 47. My cholesterol level is 161. My blood pressure is that of a 40-year-old. When I was 62 years old, I stayed on the treadmill at Cooper's Clinic in Dallas, Texas, longer than any active player in the National Football League who's taken the test, and many of them have. And unlike Mr. Kemp, I am not an athlete, but I am disciplined, and I am committed. See, 189 of the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies are former United States Marines. 26 of our presidents served in the military. What do they teach there? They teach discipline and commitment and direction and focus and energy. They teach building on integrity, if you will. I'm telling you, it absolutely is a magnificent experience. Why? Do I talk about the physical? Because I believe we have a responsibility to take care of our body. Just as a matter of curiosity, is there anybody here who owns a racehorse worth in excess of $1 million? Let me ask you a question. If you had $1 million racehorse, would you keep him up half the night, let him drink coffee and booze and smoke cigarettes and eat junk food? And if you did, how many races would that sucker win? And if we take this $1 billion body of ours and abuse it, then how many races are we really going to win? Take care of yourself mentally. You need to grow. Let me tell you one of the most exciting bits of information here. At Georgetown University Medical School, they discovered that in 100% of the cases, when you improve your vocabulary, your IQ goes up. Simple suggestion, won't take you any time at all. Buy yourself a dictionary and put it in the bathroom. I'll absolutely guarantee you that if you will learn one new word a day, it will have a dramatic impact on your understanding of a whole lot of things. Your vocabulary, your ability to express every human emotion will expand so tremendously that you'll be able to explain every human emotion and demonstrate every one of them without using one single vulgar, profane word. That's right. You'll even be able to express yourself without taking God's name in vain. And when you look at that, think of the tremendous advantage that will give you in life. Yes, the ability to express yourself. If you have any questions about the spiritual aspects of life, is it important? Let me encourage you. Go to your library. Pick up a copy of the April 28, 1986 issue of Fortune magazine. That was April 28, 1986 issue of Fortune magazine. And in it you'll read they did a study of the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies. Here's what they found. 52% of them came from the lower middle class or poor families. Doesn't make any difference where you start, folks. 91% of them were either Catholic, Jewish, or Protestant. There was some indication they were at least semi-active in their faith. Only 7% professed no faith at all. 91% expressed their interest in their faith. Now, apparently, faith plays a part. That indicates that they learned their ethics, their morals, and their values out of the Bible or out of church. I got news for you. If Tom Peters or Stephen Covey wrote a book, and 91% of the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies says, that's the one I read, I guarantee you the bookstores would have a flood of people wanting to buy that book, because information is valid. If you want to take it one more step, if you can find a copy of Who, you will read there that it takes 2,500 professional families, doctors, professors, attorneys, and whatever, to produce one member of Who's Who. But it only takes 7 missionary families to produce one member of Who's Who. I think that's worth looking into. You see, what I've said so many times is you got to be before you can do, and you got to do before you can have. I think a message I'm the kind of guy that take his last $2 and buy a money belt. I mean, that's my base. Okay, to people, failure is an event. It is not a person. Yesterday really did end last night. Today is a brand new day, and it is yours. You can start over today. It's the same plan every day, and you'll be amazed at how much more you will be able to get done if you take it to that step. I want to kind of wind it up by talking about something I think is critically important. What are we going to leave behind? When they lower you into that ground the last time, how will you be remembered? What legacy will you leave? Will they remember you as a great speaker or a great philanthropist? Will they remember you as a person who changed lives? Let me tell you why in my new book I don't even talk about the dollars. I don't talk about corporate position. And that's not to say I'm not vitally interested in them, because I am. But you see, I believe that's the result of doing the right things and being the right person. Every year in Yazoo City we have family reunion. We live in Dallas. Now, the rest of the family lives much closer, and they generally drive in for the big family reunion, and the pig out takes place every Saturday. Or that Saturday. It starts at 11:17 and ends at 9:14 that evening. Average weight gain is 2.2 pounds. It would be higher than that, but the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that we have so many little ones around, it's not realistic to expect a 25% weight gain, with them involved. So, on this particular occasion, we stopped in Jackson, rented the car, drove to Yazoo City, and stopped in a grocery store. My wife, she took her checkbook out, and she wrote the check for the amount, and handed it to the lady, and immediately she reached into her billfold and pulled out a couple of credit cards as well as her driver's license and said, "I suppose you'll want to see these." The lady never looked down at the driver's license or the credit card. She was looking at the check. She said, "No, in Yazoo City, this name is all the identification we'll need." Now, please understand, I'd been gone well over 40 years. She was not talking about me. She was talking about my mother and my older brothers and sisters and the legacy they'd left behind. That day, I promised anew that if I never left a dime, I would try to leave my family a name that they could build on. You see, when you build a name, you can build a business. When you build a business, you influence people.
To watch another amazing Zig Ziglar video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
We program ourselves. For example, an overweight person sits down at the table and says, "Everything I eat turns to fat." We lay down late at night, we know we got to get up early tomorrow morning. We look at our watch and say, "Boy, I bet I'm going to feel bad tomorrow."